Y'all, so Aubrey O'Day from Danny Kane just pulled up with some more receipts on Diddy, and it's not looking good for him at all, because Aubrey did not come to play either. Aubrey's Danny Kane co-member Don Richard filed a messy and explosive lawsuit against Diddy last week, where she accused him of allegedly mistreating the Danny Kane girls and subjecting them to torture-like conditions. She also claimed to have witnessed him put hands on Cassie in public and other women. Well, Aubrey is now claiming to allegedly be one of those women who were hurt and mistreated by Diddy. And y'all, she came with some long receipts that just might put Diddy in jail for a long time, because the tea she's about to spill is crazy spicy. Don Richard's lawsuit came out of the nowhere because everybody thought that she was still cool with Diddy. I mean, sure, we all started to give Diddy the side eye when it came to his relationships with women, all thanks to Cassie after her explosive lawsuit. Well, Cassie's lawsuit also gave more women the courage to come forward, and so far there have been 6 or 7 women who have filed lawsuits against Diddy, accusing him of inappropriate behavior and misconduct going back about 30 years to the early 90s. So yeah, we definitely knew that Diddy allegedly had a lot of but what we didn't expect was that Don Richard was going to be one of them. For one, she chose to stay with Diddy's label after Danny Kane broke up, and that had people believing that she was something of a teacher's pet. She was a part of Dirty Money, and she also appeared on Diddy's last album, Love, which he dropped in September 2023, only a few weeks before Cassie's lawsuit dropped. And let's not even get into the fact that she had always talked about how fiercely loyal she was to Diddy, and how he was always going to have her loyalty no matter what, because he bought her out of a bad contract, and she said he will always be her forever homie.
Ever since you went independent, do you talk to Diddy?
Not as often as I'd like, but that's the homie forever.
Yeah.
People will never understand that relationship, like people didn't know that Puff had bought me out of a contract prior to even getting on the show.
Really?
So I had loyalty to that, and that's a respect that I understand, that I loved my group, and I know that it wasn't I chose Puff over my group at the time. It was more of, when someone does that, where I come from, you got to respect that on a large level. So I gave loyalty to him, and I think I'll never forget that. And my father and my mother, for what we gone through, will never forget that. And I think with all his crazy, I look at things like that as loyalty. So I was loyal to him, and I paid my dues back like a businesswoman should.
Right.
Until he said, okay, your dues are paid, and then I left. Not, I'm gonna leave you after you did me something, and then just a solid, and then say, oh, by the way, thank you for buying out my contract, but now I'm gonna go over here. I just never said anything about that.
I kept that contract,
and I never told anybody. I took all the hate that came with it, that people thought I had didn't choose my group. I just took it. Because it's a loyalty thing for me. It's a respect.
Absolutely.
And I didn't want to get shelved. I didn't want to get financially and business wise. It just wasn't smart.
Yeah.
So I wanted to pay my dues, so I did, and I always respect him for that.
Yeah.
She also claimed that she had no bad story about Diddy.
That's it. It wasn't all perfect. It wasn't all great. Yeah. He's exactly what people say he is, but he's also, he gave me a shot. I don't have the story that you have. I have I got out alive.
Yeah.
And I got out with a business. And I don't have no bad stories. That was only support. So if you do good by other people, they'll do good by you.
So because of this, a lot of people felt a type of way about her lawsuit, and she has also been accused of making things up for a quick payday. However, if you read between the lines, you'll probably realize that she actually dropped some hints that things weren't what they seemed. For example, in the interview, she talked about how much things weren't perfect and how she was lucky to get out alive. It seems like she was scared to tell the truth and was just going along with whatever version of the story Diddy wanted her to tell. And honestly, can you blame her? Diddy allegedly blew up Kid Cudi's car and allegedly bragged to multiple people about how he could make people disappear. So yeah, it looks like Dawn was thinking that she needed to stroke his ego and keep her mouth shut until a time when he was vulnerable enough for her to come forward and tell her truth. And y'all, did she ever spill her truth? In her lawsuit, she backed Cassie up, claiming that she witnessed Diddy put hands on Cassie multiple times, and that when she tried to help Cassie, Diddy allegedly tried to unalive her. The court document said, on numerous occasions, Miss Richard witnessed Mr. Combs brutally beat his girlfriend, Miss Cassandra Cassie Ventura, Miss Ventura. His persistent abuse included choking and strangling Miss Ventura, striking her with his hands and with objects, slapping her, punching her, and throwing items at her, including a scalding hot pan. On many occasions, Miss Richard tried to intervene, offering Miss Ventura support and encouragement to leave Mr. Combs. Each time, Mr. Combs learned of her efforts to help Miss Ventura and became enraged, threatening Miss Richards' life with statements such as, "You want to die today? I make ninjas go missing, and I end people." And y'all remember how Cassie said that Diddy often put hands on her in public and people never tried to help her? Dawn also revealed that Diddy once punched Cassie in front of Neo and Usher, but they didn't even flinch and continued eating. The lawsuit says, Combs hosted a dinner at a West Hollywood, California restaurant, which Miss Richard and Miss Harper were required to attend. Among the guests at the dinner were celebrities like Neo and Usher, as well as Mr. Levine. At the dinner, Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura had an argument. In front of the dinner guests, Mr. Combs hissed at Miss Ventura in a screaming whisper and forcibly punched her in the stomach, causing her to double over in visible pain, crying. Miss Clark escorted Miss Ventura out of the restaurant, and Mr. Combs remained and continued socializing with the dinner guests. Dawn also backed up Little Rod's claims about how Diddy had some young girls partying in the studio using some not legal substances. Often while they were recording in the studio, Mr. Combs would hold parties where he would invite young men and women who were often scantily dressed and appeared underage to use drugs and engage in sex acts. Miss Richard observed Mr. Combs and his colleagues kissing, groping, and inappropriately touching the young women. Upon information and belief, the participants often left the immediate area to have intercourse and returned shortly thereafter. The lawsuit also talked about how badly Diddy treated girls of Danity Kane while producing Making the Band 3 and 4. She said, throughout the productions of Making the Band 3 and 4, Mr. Combs deprived Miss Richard and her Danity Kane bandmates of basic needs such as adequate food and sleep. When Miss Richard or her Danity Kane bandmates requested meals or rest, Mr. Combs refused and chastised them with derogatory comments like, "You bees don't want this," or "Y'all are not hungry enough," and "I'm paying you bees to work." It continued, upon information and belief, Mr. Combs would regularly be awake for prolonged periods of time because he was high on drugs. During these periods, Mr. Combs demanded continuous access to Miss Richard and her Danity Kane bandmates, often forcing them to record and rehearse for stretches of 36 to 48 hours without breaks. And the one time she tried to stand up for herself, well, allegedly, Diddy had one of his goons lock her in an unheated car in the middle of winter. The lawsuit says, Miss Richards screamed as loudly as she could, but no one responded. It was late evening in the wintertime. The windows were heavily tinted, and the interior of the car was dark except for faint interior lights. Miss Richards' belongings and winter coat were in the studio, while the ignition was off and there was no heat. With Mr. Combs' prior threats and violence running through her mind, Miss Richard felt sheer panic, terror, and feelings of claustrophobia at being locked in a small, dark, enclosed space with no way to communicate or call for help. She began to feel cold and feared for her life, not knowing when or if she would be released. Y'all, this situation is crazy, but according to Aubrey O'Day, Dawn was not the only member of Danity Kane to have gotten this treatment from Diddy, because she also got treated like that. Looking back, we should have seen the red flags waving in the air because Making the Band was a crazy hot mess. But at the time, reality TV was messy and very toxic, so everybody took it as normal back then. I mean, y'all remember how toxic some other similar shows like America's Next Top Model were? So at the time, nobody really thought that what Diddy did to Danity Kane on the show was that bad. However, Aubrey was one of those people who tried hard to fight back against Diddy and didn't take any BS from him. She was very stubborn, and this caused her to clash with Diddy many times.
Question, what do you want to look like though? Do you want to look like a playboy, playmate? Do you want to look like you?
I'm done with all of that.
No. Like, what do you want to look like though?
I'll tell you.
What do you want to look like though?
I'll tell you. I'm not focused on me. I'm focused on what this group should look like and how I should fit in this situation.
You like big hair though.
I don't like big hair.
You like big hair. You like big hair. You like a lot of makeup and all that.
Actually, I don't. I don't like big hair. I don't like certain makeup. I'm very flexible with what you want to do. And I've worked with everything that you've thrown
I'm not seeing the flexibility. You gaming me.
Your hair people came in today and they said, this is how it needs to be.
You know what I'm talking about. You're pushing your own image though.
I'm not worried about whether my hair is straight, curly, whatever. I'm not here in a group to have curly, straight, big, makeup, whatever. I'm here in a group to sing with my group. And that is all I care about.
She was not about to let Diddy pressure her into being something she wasn't. And she made that very clear to him. It turns out that the real reason Aubrey and Diddy kept butting heads was that allegedly Diddy was trying to get her to be one of his girls on the low, if you know what I mean. Yeah, he supposedly tried to hook up with them, and when they said no, he started acting out and treating them poorly. And to make matters worse, they couldn't really speak up because he had them locked down with an ironclad NDA, so they were basically stuck. Now, after the band broke up, Diddy still tried to control the girls, but Aubrey was not about to hand him the controls. For example, a few weeks after Cassie filed her lawsuit, Diddy made a big show of giving his former artists their masters back, claiming that he was just being a good person. However, it turns out that he knew that Cassie's lawsuit was coming, and he was trying to get some good publicity before the storm of the lawsuit blew up. While he gave the masters back, he said, "It's just doing the right thing. I think that we as an industry and as a people have to look in the mirror and make a shift forward. It's about evolving, leading by example, and reforming an industry that needs it in a world that needs reform. I'll tell you one thing that I do want people to know. It's not a publicity stunt or anything like that." What he didn't mention was that before he handed over the masters, he made them sign an NDA, basically promising to never spill any information about what really went down at Bad Boy Records. At the time, it came off like a nice gesture, but now, with everything we know, there was definitely more to it. Turns out he already knew Cassie's lawsuit was on the horizon and was clearly trying to rack up some good PR before things hit the fan. But not everybody was fooled. Some of his former artists saw right through it and refused to sign. And one of those artists were Aubrey O'Day.
It's about $800, $900, some in the hundreds, okay? And in order to get that, I have to release him for any claims or wrongdoings or actions prior to the date of the release. I have to sign an NDA that I will never disparage Puff, Bad Boy, Janice Combs, or Justin Combs' music, or EMI, or Sony ever in public. So what's happening is artists, some of them, not all of them, are being given streaming royalties and ownership back over our publishing on songs that we wrote at a time when you know that you have to stream a song 1,000,000 times to make a cent.
Yeah.
Okay. It's hundreds of dollars. And me, as somebody that's a girl's girl, I hit everyone in my group and said, absolutely do not take this deal. I can get us a show on Hulu right now.
She also claimed that those masters weren't even worth that much, only about $800 or $900, definitely less than $1,000. And Diddy was out here acting like he was offering some life-changing deal while trying to get them to sign their souls away. But Aubrey wasn't having it. She even convinced the other girls in her group not to sign the NDA either. Diddy's former bodyguard Gene Dill also confirmed the story.
All his artists, when he gave them their publishing back. I'm gonna give y'all publishing, but y'all can't talk about Janice Combs, Justin Combs, Sony, Bad Boy, or anything that happened. Y'all can't talk about none of that. But there's some artists that didn't say anything, that didn't sign it, and they able to talk about anything they want to. And I think that's those girls that was, I think Danny Kane. I think a couple of them didn't sign it.
Because she didn't sign that NDA, Aubrey is free to talk about her time with Diddy, and y'all, she has been spilling. She exposed how Diddy would purposefully pit the girls against each other, causing drama and division, so he could keep control over them.
The stories that we have to tell during a time in music where there were gatekeepers, there were people that owned labels like Puff running things, and the way that the divisions and the divisiveness occurred, and the things that we experienced between each other and us against the system are fucking insane.
She then claimed that not only would Diddy body shame them, but he also tried to hook up with them and got mad when they turned him down.
Thing you could imagine why somebody would want to fire somebody.
Can you give us a little?
I wasn't willing to do what was expected of me. Not talent-wise, but in other areas.
Mm-hmm. And were other girls doing?
I was the only one that was in those types of positions. He was the hardest person that you can work for, and it was torture. And not the work part of it, but the other stuff. Mind games, like just all the girls were so divided, and the men and the people running it had their hands in it. moving everything. It's difficult when you're that young to understand your worth as a woman through the men that I was around. And that was very traumatic. I don't think any of us have healed from that. Diddy would be like, you're not hot anymore. Like, what happened? You don't have anything, like, you don't have any curves. You're looking like you're not looking like, I can't get people to think that you're my good looking person.
Looking back now, even just watching the show, it's very clear that Diddy was bullying them right in front of everyone. But like I said, reality TV was so wild back then that most people either didn't think much of it or didn't realize how wrong it was. But fast forward to Cassie's lawsuit and all the other lawsuits piling up against him, and folks are finally connecting the dots, realizing just how messed up he really was. For example, remember how Diddy was always telling them how to dress and act? Well, turns out it wasn't just about their public image. Allegedly, he was pimping them out to other men. He wanted them to look a certain way for the men he was supposedly hooking them up with.
Because I heard him, and I'm giving you this, Aubrey. He stood up there and he said in front of a lot of people, we were in the studio, and I said something to him and walked out the studio. He said, yo, I'm going to drug their ass off and pick them up and pimp them out to my nigga. He said, I'm going to drug them out. I'm going to get them all on drugs, and I'm going to pimp their ass out to my nigga. And I was like, there's somebody kids, and walked out.
Well, Aubrey O'Day is also claiming that Diddy allegedly did some horrible things to her too, if you know what I mean. She claimed that Diddy allegedly touched her inappropriately and allegedly tried to SA her on multiple occasions. But not only that, treated her like a slave, and that she had it worse than other girls in the group because she was the only one with the guts to talk back to him and stand up for herself. She claimed that this made Diddy even more into her, and the more she tried to stand up for herself, the more he tried to break her down and get her to bend to his demands. She described it as a toxic situation and that she was lucky to get away when she did. And you know the fans have a whole lot of questions and a lot of things to say, and they've been tweeting stuff like, Aubrey O'Day been talking about Diddy for years. Aubrey O'Day will be filing her lawsuit against Diddy next. She's been ready to go to court in her peep toe wedges. Y'all, this situation is absolutely wild and crazy. What a time we're living in. But I gotta know what y'all think about this. Drop your thoughts and comments below and then check out this next video.